ever seen a picture of someone from over 100 years ago and thought to yourself, gee, I wonder whatever happened to them? Well, it happened to me with this little boy from 1913. Where were his parents while he worked? Did he grow up to be successful and have everything that he needed? In the case of Robert Self Paul, not really. I'll tell you how I was able to piece together quite a bit about this boy and the trouble that he managed to get into. Let's just say that by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how much jail time you can expect to get if you counterfeit nickels in 1933. My name is James, and I've been a genealogist now for over 10 years. And I started this channel because I like to find pictures in antique malls, I like to find old gravestones, and random artifacts here and there, and try to figure out who the people are behind them and tell a little bit about their lives. So this video started with a question on our Facebook group about these newsboys from Albany, New York. So I started working on figuring out who they were and getting everything that I needed to tell a story about them. I even found some scans of one of the newspapers that they're holding. But then I found this page where another researcher already did a fantastic job of finding out everything that you could really find about those boys and telling their story. I'll leave a link down below in the description, just like I did on our Facebook page. But that picture was taken by Louis Hine. He was a socialist turned advocate for children's workers' rights, and he was very active. Here's what Wikipedia has to say about him. Hine's work for the NCLC was often dangerous. As a photographer, he was frequently threatened with violence or even death by factory police and foremen. At the time, the immorality of child labor was meant to be hidden from the public. Photography was not only prohibited, but also posed a serious threat to the industry. To gain entry to the mills, mines, and factories, Hine was forced to assume many guises. At times, he was a fire inspector, a postcard vendor, a Bible salesman, or even an industrial photographer making a record of factory machinery. The Library of Congress has tons of photos from him. So I picked one of another newsie because this one jumped out at me. The look on his face looks like a grown man at the end of a tough year. The note that the photographer has on him that the Library of Congress was able to say is that he is Robert Paul, living at 216 Johnson Street. 10-year-old newsie, found at 11 p.m. with 12 papers near Seminole Hotel. Been at it 4 years. So he was selling newspapers when he was 6. Often sells until midnight. He and brother make about $1.50 a day. Goes to school little. Sells around the College Inn. Location, Jacksonville, Florida. As I was researching Hine the photographer, I discovered that a lot of his photos that the Library of Congress have similar notes. So you can probably expect more videos of his work in the future. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already so that you don't miss them. And leave a comment down below if your grandparent, great-grandparent, or maybe even your parent had to work as a kid way back in the day before child labor laws changed everything. Those would be some interesting comments to read. The note from the photographer gives 3 really important clues, so it shouldn't be that difficult to track him down if we know where to look. Robert Paul lived on 216 Johnson Street in 1913. So in theory, all you really need is a city directory from Jacksonville, Florida in 1913. You can sometimes find old directories online with certain county archives and memorial libraries and that sort of thing. But Ancestry has a very large database of them already online, and it makes it pretty easy to go through them. If you're having trouble finding somebody specifically, but you know about where they were, you can just go to the collection section of Ancestry and dig through the pages yourself, just like an old phone book. You can go to Search, Catalog. On the left-hand side, click on Directories and Member Lists, then City and Area Directories, and in my case, or maybe our case, let's narrow it down to USA. And then this little guy right here, U.S. City Directories 1822 to 1995. Here, it's nice and easy to choose your state and city, so let's check out Florida and Jacksonville. Our photo was taken in 1913, so let's start there. The only drawback to looking at it this way is that you're going to have to click through all the pages manually or scroll through quickly by typing in a number. If there's a faster way to search somebody in this directory without using the usual Ancestry search function, light me up in the comments. You'll save me plenty of time in the future. All the way on page 507 of the scan, which is page number 964 in the actual document, is Bessie, parentheses, Wid James, H216 Johnson Street. So like I said, pretty easy to find his parents. We have both of his parents' names, not just his dad or just his mom. We've got both of them. Wid stands for widow. So this is saying she is the widow of James. From here, I like to build a private ancestry tree so that it keeps my thoughts together and I can kind of see how everybody's connected a little bit easier. It's easier for me to have it all laid out in front of me. Here's a tip about the abbreviations in old city directories, because a lot of them are referring to jobs that haven't even existed in decades. So either you weren't alive back then to know about them, or maybe you've forgotten what they were, or you never knew they had an abbreviation. There is a trick, and that is that there is usually a legend somewhere towards the beginning of the directory that will tell you what the abbreviations mean. In this case, it's on page 84. So if you didn't know what WID means, it's right there. At this point, the private tree I make can have 3 people, Robert and both of his parents, James and Bessie. I can key Robert's presumed birth year as 1903 because he's 10 in the photo taken in 1913. And I can also put in his mom's location of Jacksonville. I can say exactly what town they were in that year. So the hints start flowing in. And pretty quickly I was able to figure out that Robert's brother that's mentioned in the photography notes was Russell, born in 1900. I can tell you that Bessie was not a widow in 1913. This hint is a user-uploaded document, a marriage certificate, a very, very detailed marriage certificate. Bessie married James in New York, which is where Robert and Russell later said they were born. Here is a user-uploaded of James Paul that says he was in Key West after the hurricane in 1909. It could be that he moved his family south for work to rebuild. In 1927, however, James Paul turns up in Nacogdoches, Texas. This is now my second video that's mentioned Nacogdoches, Texas, the first one being with the Lee children. Go check that one out. I'm sure it's him based on the details matching his marriage certificate. And I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. When you are looking for someone and following their story, don't get hung up on the small details because they can vary wildly from document to document. We see this nowadays in current times. Everyone has a story about how their name got misspelled or a birthday got put in wrong and their insurance got misfiled or their application fell through because something didn't match. Everyone's been through it. Well, that has never changed. In fact, it was worse back before computers and everyone could kind of do a better job of keeping their name spelled the same, because once upon a time, people didn't always spell their name the exact same way throughout their whole life. It was more of a phonetic thing. As long as people could hear your name and understood your name, you were usually identified. So that's why you have to consider everything together. Take all of the clues, take the big picture, and make sure it all makes sense. If you've got something that stands out that just really doesn't fit, that's the piece that you have to investigate and make sure you're right. We have Robert Paul's father, James, living in Texas in the 1920s, not widowing Bessie in 1910. He actually RUNOFFT. Here is his death certificate from 1927. His parental and birth locations match up to his wedding license that we found earlier, but his cause of death is dropped dead. In 1923, the DeLange, Florida local paper announces that Robert is visiting his mom at her home. This is around the same time that he got married to Tenny Browning, sometime between 1923 and 1924, because she appears in the Jacksonville directory as his wife sometime around those years. But because directories were published a year after the information came out, it can get a little tricky to determine exactly when they got married, but it was around there. You can narrow it down to within a couple of years. Now, here is where Robert's life took a turn. In 1925, the Jacksonville City Directory has him listed at BR Manager on Whiddon's, which was a local general store back then. He was the branch manager of that store. And that's how he was able to help somebody steal the safe out of the back door. Here's what the papers had to say. Pause to read. Just after midnight on January 29th, 1928, Robert and his accomplice, Frank Benefield, took the safe out the back door of the store and loaded it into a truck. They took it to the woods and busted out the bottom of it with an axe. He made it all the way down to Houston, but he somehow figured out that he was being tracked. So he does what anyone would do. He enlists in the army. I guess he thought he could get away. But it didn't take very long for the cops to figure that one out, and they called the military base and had him arrested immediately. I mean, this paper is from February 25th. He was on the run less than a month. After he was caught, he tried to slip the cuffs over his head and escape off the train. But it didn't work. He got 2.5 years in prison. He got out sometime around 1930. And in 1930, he and Tinny are listed for a divorce. And she is living with her family. In the census, she lists herself as widow. Then in 1932, Robert gets busted trying to break into a beach store in Daytona. He got 6 months in county for that one. But that's still not all. Our boy Robert gets caught up in one more scheme. Pause to read. In 1933, Robert and 2 of his accomplices are caught owning molds, casting, and using counterfeit nickels. They got caught because one of them was trying to use them in slot machines. After they got caught, Robert was sentenced to 18 months. In 1935, soon after he got out, he moved back home to New York, where he died 6 months later after a brief illness. I couldn't find a death certificate from that specific county, but the obituary shows brief illness, so I mean that was fairly common back then. Even now, I guess, it is pretty common. So Robert was photographed by an activist trying to expose the United States' child labor problem by giving it a face to the issue. I was hoping to find out that he went on to be an important figure in his city, like his brother, or that maybe he rose above what he had to deal with and became a doctor, like his son. But Robert was fighting really tough odds from early on in his life. And unfortunately, he was not able to rise above it.